Welcome to Part 2 of this module on regulatory research. This part will focus on FDSys, which is short for the Government Printing Office's Federal Digital System. FDSys is the only online resource which provides free access to official federal government publications that have been certified as authentic. FDSys collections include congressional materials, presidential publications, and federal agency resources. There are approximately 50 different collections of government information available via FDSys. A few examples, such as congressional bills and the Federal Register, are listed here. Let's get familiar with the FDSys homepage. Note the featured collections on the right-hand side. The Code of Federal Regulations and the Federal Register are both listed. For a complete view of the FDSys collections, click on Browse Collections. You will then see this list together with years of coverage. Note that coverage of the CFR dates back to 1996 and coverage of the Federal Register dates back to 1994. In most instances, you'll want to research the most recent version of the regulations. However, in some cases, you may need to find out what regulations were in effect a number of years ago. The historical coverage that FDSys provides could therefore be very useful. If you are researching current law, you will want to see the latest annual edition of the CFR that contains the titles in which you are interested. As mentioned in Part 1 of this module, the CFR is updated annually, but different titles are updated at different times of year. Look for the latest edition which contains your title. In this instance, the 2012 edition contains Title 21. Note, however, that not all 50 CFR titles are yet included in the 2012 edition. As mentioned earlier, the titles are updated on a quarterly schedule throughout the year. As you can see in each annual CFR edition, the first group of titles is updated as of January 1, and the next group, including Title 21, as of April 1. The next group of titles is updated as of July 1 and will soon be added to this 2012 edition. The remaining titles will be updated and added as of October 1. If you are looking for a specific section like Section 101.14, you will have to drill down to find it. This can sometimes be challenging when there are further subdivisions and you have only the title and section numbers. As you can see, Title 21 is further divided into chapters and subchapters, parts and subparts. You can usually find your way by looking at the subject matter and part and section ranges in each division. One advantage of browsing is that you see the regulations in context. This table of contents does the same thing. We can see, for example, how Section 101.14 fits within Subpart A, General Provisions. Specific provisions and exceptions usually follow general provisions. Thus, there is a whole system for how regulations are organized. In addition, these regulations all cross-reference one another, so seeing them in context can be very helpful. Note the authority and source information at the end of the table of contents of Part 101. Another approach is to return to the FDSys homepage and retrieve a document by citation. Just select the collection title, in this instance the Code of Federal Regulations, then input the annual CFR edition, usually the most recent, and the title, and section numbers. You will then retrieve the text of this regulation as it appears in the 2012 edition of the CFR. This text is identical to what you would find in the official print version of the CFR. Note the certificate of authenticity at the top of this document. This GPO digital signature is your assurance that as of the date it was published, the text of this document has not been altered. Thus, you can rely upon FDSys to provide access to a digital copy of this regulation, which is official and authentic. Now that we have browsed for regulations and retrieved a regulation by citation, let's try a more advanced search. This advanced search template lets you select a specific date and collection. Let's select the Code of Federal Regulations. By moving it from the Available Collections box on the left to the Selected Collections box on the right. In addition, you can search the full text of a regulation or a specific field of the document by using these search boxes below. These fields correspond to information in the metadata that describes and accompanies each document. If we want to limit our search to Title 21, for example, we could enter that number in the CFR title number field. We can use up to 5 boxes in our search. The help link at the bottom of the screen provides suggestions for searching, including putting phrases like health claims in quotation marks. Let's add a box with these search terms. In addition, we can use the asterisk wildcard symbol to retrieve all variations of a word. For example, truncating the word definition and using the asterisk will retrieve the words definition, define, and defined. We'll add one more box with this search term. Now, let's go ahead and run our search. We retrieved 223 results with this search, a few too many to scan efficiently. Note, however, that we can filter our results using the criteria in the left-hand column. If we want to filter by date, for example, we could do so by selecting a particular year, like 2012. We could also click on Show Only Recent Editions to do the same thing. Or we could have limited our search to that year initially on the Advanced Search template. Just keep in mind that the CFR collection at FDSys includes historical and current editions of the CFR, unlike the FDA website or eCFR, which we will learn about in Part 3 of this module. Let's show only recent editions, which reduces our search results to 14. Not surprisingly, Section 101.14 is again one of our search results. Let's analyze the metadata to learn more about the document we have retrieved by clicking the More Information link. Note that this information can be searched via the FDSys search template that we just used. We can see, for example, that our search pulled a document from the Code of Federal Regulations collection, specifically Title 21. If we scroll down further, we can again see this document in context. Note the list of related publications in the left-hand column. As you may recall, the Federal Register is another important collection within FDSys. When we look at the source information, or citation text as FDSys calls it, we see numerous references to the Federal Register. The first reference is to the text of the regulation when it was first published in the Federal Register on January 6, 1993. Unfortunately, FDSys coverage of the Federal Register starts with 1994, so we cannot look up the text of this regulation when it was first created using FDSys, but we could see the text of later amendments. Let's take a look at the most recent amendment, for example, in the March 30, 2001 issue of the Federal Register. Since we have the complete citation, volume 66, page 17358, and date of this particular issue, all we need to do is click on this Federal Register link and browse the issues by date until we find the one we need. We must again use this drill down approach to locate the year, month, and date of this specific issue. It also helps to know the name of the agency which promulgated the rule you are looking for. In this case, the Food and Drug Administration. Note the kinds of information displayed when we click on an issue of the Federal Register. This information includes final rules, proposed rules, and notices. Only final rules are published in the CFR. Here we see the text of the latest amendment to Section 101.14 on page 17358 of the March 30, 2001 issue. Let's now go back to the related resources and take a look at another important tool for regulatory research, the list of CFR sections affected, or LSA. The LSA is an updating tool that allows us to find out if any changes have been made to our regulation since the last CFR revision date. As you may recall, we were able to find the text of Section 101.14 in the April 2012 edition of the CFR. Since we are researching this regulation in July, It is possible that changes could have been made in the last 2 months since the CFR was published last April. At the end of each month, an LSA which covers any changes made that month is published. We would therefore check the monthly LSAs for both May and June 2012. We browse the LSA for May until we arrive at Title 21 and scan the entries for our section number. Since Section 101.14 does not appear, we know that there have been no changes to that section in May 2012. If there had been an entry in the monthly LSA, it would include a page reference to the Federal Register, such as this reference to page 25-360, where Section 511.3 was added. We would then need to find the table of Federal Register issue pages and dates at the end of the LSA and look up the page number to find the date of the Federal Register issue. As we can see from these page number ranges, page 25-360 is in the April 30th, 2012 issue. Let's go back to the Federal Register and scroll to the April 30 issue to see the text of new section 511.3. Note the action field, which indicates that this is a final rule. Note further this summary and background information, which precede the rule itself. This preliminary information is known as the Preamble. In this instance, the Preamble comes to 7 pages, much longer than the rule itself, which appears here on page 25-360. This Preamble is extremely helpful to those researching the history of a regulation. As mentioned earlier, only the text of the final rule itself is published in the CFR, so this Preamble is not included. One must therefore remember to use the Federal Register to find this important information. We'll come back to this new section 511.3, which adds definitions to Part 511 on new animal drugs, in Part 3 of this module. Let's now go back to the LSA and finish the updating process for Section 101.14 on health claims. At this point in the process, we need to find the next monthly LSA. If no monthly LSA is available for June, for example, just navigate back to the FDSys homepage and the Federal Register. Then locate the last issue for that month, in this case, June 29. Look at the table of contents for that issue and scroll down to Reader Aids, where you will find a mini LSA for the month of June. We follow the same process as we did with the May LSA and find no changes under Title 21. Our regulatory research is now current as of Friday, June 29. Could it even be more current? The answer is yes. Each issue of the Federal Register contains a mini LSA, which can bring your research current up to the date of that issue. As of the date of this recording, July 18, 2012 was the latest Federal Register issue available. We can find the mini LSA for this July 18 issue by using the table of contents and locating the Reader Aids at the end of the issue, just as we did for the month of June. This mini LSA confirms that no changes affecting our section were made from July 1 to July 18. Using the LSA and the Federal Register, we can thereby verify that our research is current as of the actual day of our research. This updating process is identical to how we would update using the print versions of the CFR, LSA, and Federal Register. It is much easier now that these publications have been digitized via FDSys. However, updating regulatory research can still be tedious, to say the least. FDSys provides an alternative digital option which makes the process go a little more quickly. We would update using the monthly LSA as mentioned earlier. However, to update beyond the monthly LSA, we would click on this link to browse CFR parts affected from the Federal Register. This unique FDSys feature allows us to search the LSA within the past 24 hours, latest week, latest month, or specific date range. The monthly LSA for May let us update through May 31, and the date of our research is July 18. So let's try a custom search from June 1, 2012 to July 18, 2012. The search retrieves a list of titles and the parts within them. We can look again for Title 21 and Part 101. Since Part 101 does not appear, we know that that part has not been affected during the time specified. In fact, with this custom search shortcut, we could probably skip the monthly LSA and just run our search from the date of the last CFR revision in which our regulation appears, in this case April 1. This digital shortcut also provides a direct link to any changes as they appear in the Federal Register. So if there had been any changes during our custom date range, we could go right to them. For example, we could start our search as of June 1, 2011, and look at this change to Part 101 relating to health claims about phytosterols and heart disease. When we click on the link to this change, we see that it was published in the February 21, 2012 issue of the Federal Register. This new electronic LSA is a powerful tool which makes it possible to research not only the most recent regulatory amendments, but also the regulatory history, much more easily than ever before. We have now covered the major features of FDSys for regulatory research. Of particular note is the historical coverage and the digitization of official government publications which have been certified as authentic. Given these features, I think you will agree that FDSys is an invaluable resource. There is one more free government resource that you might want to use in order to see the text of a regulation which includes even the most recent amendments as soon as they become effective. This resource is the Electronic CFR or eCFR. Unlike most of the collections in FDSys, the eCFR has no print equivalent. We will cover eCFR next in Part 3 of this module. This concludes Part 2 of this module on regulatory research. Before moving on to Part 3, please refer to your LS1 course website and answer the brief questions relating to what you have learned thus far about regulatory research.